I'm so glad you're here. This is Be Real with Jody, where we talk about like actual tools that can help you live the life that you want to live. Not just be positive, not just, look for the good. It's like, actually, what could I do to feel better? Okay. So today, I want to ask you a question. Do you worry a lot? Do you think of like what's going to happen in the future, or do you fear the unknown? I've been coaching a lot of clients about this lately, and so I wanted to give you some actual tools. Like when you're super worried, what do you do? So usually if you tell someone you're worried, what do they say? They're like, don't worry, right? How does that work out? When someone tells you not to worry, you're like, what do? You actually have to like convince them why it's really necessary for you to worry, right? So it almost makes it like even stronger. But here's the thing. I'm not going to tell you not to worry. This is what I want you to do. This might sound crazy, okay? I want you to go to like worst case scenario, okay? So like let's just pretend. What are you worried about today? Like think in your mind. I'm worried people are going to ignore me, okay? So then I'm going to ask you a question. If they ignore you, then what are you going to do? Like think in your mind. What would you do? Well, I don't know. I'd maybe like go look for somebody else to talk to. Right. Okay, well, what if they ignore you? Well, I don't know. Maybe I just leave. Okay. So you figured it out, right? Or like okay, I was coaching someone about going on a trip recently. Like it was like a science club trip, and there was a bunch of kids going, and you don't know what group you're gonna be in. You don't know who you're gonna be with. You don't know if you're gonna be able to sleep. You don't know what their food's gonna be like. And so your brain, listen, there's nothing wrong with you that you're worried. Your brain's doing its job. It's trying to tell you, hey, you should watch out for this. Like, what if you don't have the right group? What if no one pays attention to you? What if you get sick? Right? It feels like it's helping you out because it's trying to help you look out for like tigers that are going to get you, right? Okay. But here's the truth. It also, what else it does is it gives you a job. Like it gives your brain a job. It feels like it's useful. Like when we're worrying, at least we're doing something. At least I'm like on guard to what might happen. But here's the truth. When I went through my client with her and I talked about like, okay, well, if say you get sick, what would you do? Well, I'd probably go talk to like the chaperone, right? And then what would you do? Well, I'd probably get some medicine, right? And then what would you do? Well, I might be able to go home, right? So you just go to worst case scenario. You're just like, okay, if that happens, then what? Then what would you do? Okay. So here's the truth. All the things that we usually worry about and that this client was worrying about, none of them happened. But you know what happened? Other things. Like it's not going to be perfect and we know that. But when we worry, we're doing it so that we can be on guard from what's going to happen. But all it does is it wastes our energy. And the truth is, most of the time, the thing that we're actually worried about, that's not what's going to happen. It's going to be something else. So, okay, for example, none of the things that she thought were going to happen happened, but some other stuff happened, right? And so we took a look at it like, okay, well, what happened? Well, I was feeling left out, right? Okay, yeah, so what did you do? Well, I felt a little bit sad, right? Okay, and then what did you do? Well, after a little bit, I realized, hey, I think I might be like leaving myself out. So then what did you do? Well, I went over and talked to some people. And then what happened? Well, then I started having more fun, right? So it's like no matter what happens, you're going to know what to do when it happens. Like think of that in your life. Is that true? When something bad has happened, like for example, my son, he broke his ankle, okay, playing basketball. And it was really hard. And it was like 6 months of a knee scooter and not playing sports and, having a really hard time. And so, like now when he plays, it makes sense to get worried, right? It's like, well, what if that happens again, right? Like it feels like important for us to worry. Like if we're worried, at least we're gonna know, right? But here's the truth. This is what we do. Instead of like being like, what if this happens? What if this happens? How do you think you play when you're super worried? You kind of hold back. You maybe don't go all in. And here's the truth, you might actually increase the chances of getting hurt because you're not just going all in. So this is what we do. Instead of telling ourselves not to worry, we just say, okay, so what? So what if you break your ankle again? Like what would happen? Well, I'd feel really bad. That is true. When bad stuff happens, we feel bad. But then what? Like in our body, we feel bad. And then what happens? We go to bed. And then what happens? The next day we wake up. So let's say, for example, he breaks his ankle again. Then I ask him, well, what would you do? Well, I'd go to the doctor. And then what would happen? Well, I might need to get surgery again. Right. And then what would you do? Well, I'd just go through it. Right. And then what would you do? Well, I'd heal. Right. So it's like, instead of telling ourselves not to worry, let's just go to worst case scenario and walk it through. If that happened, then what would you do? And just make peace with it. Like, here's the truth. No matter what happens, you will be okay. You always have been. And that's going to continue in the future. So don't tell yourself not to worry. Just be like, hey, talk really nice to yourself. Like, hey, like I would talk to myself, like, hey, Jody, what are you worried about? Be like, well, worried? Nobody cares about my podcast. Or nobody, nobody, I'm going to say something dumb. Okay. So what if I say something dumb? Then what? I don't know. Maybe some people make fun of you. Maybe people judge you. Maybe people don't listen to you again. Okay. And then what happens? Well, I don't know. You try again. You get it better next time, right? So it's like the worst thing that happens is I feel bad, right? And then I get to decide what to do with it. So if I feel bad that day, like say I say something really dumb on here, okay? I'm just making this up right now. I say something really dumb. People get mad or people are judging me, right? Then I could decide, well, I guess I'm terrible and I should worry that, I should never do a podcast again. Or I can be like, hey, remember, like we talked about, confident people can say, I messed that up and that's not who I am, right? I have a lot of good things and I still love myself, right? So say I say something dumb, everyone's judging me. Then I just say, yeah, that's true. Actually messed that one up. But you know what? I actually have a lot more things to say, and I'm not going to make it mean that I shouldn't do this. So the next time I podcast, I'm not going to be like, well, I hope I don't do that. I'm just going to be like, yeah, what if I do? Then what will I do? I don't know. Probably just move on, make another podcast, like, so just whatever is going on for you. And like when we tell ourselves, I'm scared of the future, I don't like the unknown. Well, it's kind of like a way to keep us safe and stuck. Our brain wants us to just like sit in our cozy house and not go out into the world because it feels safe there, but it's actually kind of boring there, you guys. Okay. So here's the truth. The unknown, is some bad stuff going to happen? Yeah, probably. Also, some awesome stuff's going to happen if you leave the house and go try some stuff. So we need to give just as much airtime in our head to what could go wrong. We need to also make some airtime in our mind of what could go right. Like, what if you ask yourself this question? Like, what if it goes better than I ever imagined? What if everything's working out in my favor? What if this is the best day I've ever had? Like, let's use our brain to our advantage. Our brain can either be an asset to us or kind of hold us back. And it's all up to you. You can live your life at the effect of your brain. Okay, last thing. Pretend there's a 2-year-old and I give him a permanent marker. I'm like, hey, buddy, here you go. Here's a permanent marker. And I let him go crazy in your room. Like, what would happen? Would he just make a huge disaster? Right? He'd be like, write on some stuff, write on some walls. Okay. So, and then after a while, what do you think he would do? He'd write all over, make a mess, and then eventually he's just going to get bored, right? He's going to leave. Yeah. So when we let our brain just go crazy, just thinking of, oh, what if this, what if this, what if this? It's like a little 2-year-old with a permanent marker. It's something's not wrong with a 2-year-old if they draw on stuff. That's what 2-year-olds do, okay? Nothing's wrong with you if your brain does that, if it worries, if it thinks the worst thing's gonna happen. That's not something wrong with you. But here's the thing. We're gonna be like, hey, little buddy, we're not gonna draw with the permanent marker today. We're gonna get some crayons and we're gonna sit at the table. We're gonna color, okay? This is how you take your brain back, okay? You don't just let it go run wild with a permanent marker. You're gonna be like, okay, if that happened, what would I do? And then what would I do? And then what I do? And show your brain you will not die. You will be okay. Even if the worst things happen, you will be okay. You always have been. And then ask your brain a good question. Ask your brain, hey, how is this working out exactly how I want it to? What could I do that'd be fun? Like, give your brain a job. If you don't give it a job, it's just going to tell you everything bad because that's what our brains do. It's trying to help us. But give it a good job. Give it a goal. Give it something to look forward to. Ask your brain to do something that's going to increase the positivity in your life instead of just looking for the negative. So that's what I have for you today. I'm so glad you're listening. Let me know if you have any ideas for a podcast. If you're struggling with something and I can help you, DM me, text me, let me know, and I wanna work with you. I help all my clients apply this to their specific life. So if this sounds like pretty vague to you and you're like, yeah, except I have a big problem that I'm really worried about. I want to hear it. I want to help you in your specific situation deal with this, okay? And I feel like I'm actually really good at connecting with teenagers. And I'm not just going to tell you to be positive and don't worry. Okay. We're going to take a look at it. We'll be like, yeah, maybe you should worry. I don't know. Let me know. I want to work with you. Have a good rest of the day.